everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Heidi from My Reading Life, and I'm here today to film a review video for the Book Naturalists book club pick for the month of October. And that pick was River of the Gods by Candice Millard. Subtitle, Genius, Courage, and Betrayal in the Search for the Source of the Nile. So Candice Millard is an American author. She was born in 1967, and she worked for many years for the National Geographic as a journalist and an editor, and then has since struck out on her own and has written several nonfiction books that sort of combine geography and adventure and history. And so this was the third book of hers that I have read. I own and have read River of Doubt, which is about Teddy Roosevelt exploring a tributary of the Amazon after he was president. This was a really great book. And then this book, Destiny of the Republic, which is about the assassination of President James Garfield, which is also very, very good. So I was excited to read another Candice Millard book for our book club because I had enjoyed her previous works so much. This book was published in 2022, and it details how European explorers were tasked with trying to find the headwaters of the Nile, which this book takes place in the mid-1800s. So up until that point, there had been rumors and stories that came out of folks who lived in Africa or other places, but no European had ever seen the source of the Nile. So this book was really perfect for October because it's Victober and we're reading literature written by English authors in that sort of mid-1800s time period. This book is not written in that time period, but it is about that particular time period of English history with two very or at least with many very English characters involved. The two main characters that we're following are Richard Burton and John Hanning Speke. These are both Englishmen, both adventurers and explorers. Burton was the older of the two. He was a decorated soldier. He knew like 29 languages. He had explored various different parts of the world and had written books and had been published on those topics. So he was sort of the darling of the Geographic Society in London. Although he was not well liked by very many people. He was not an aristocrat, and he was an atheist, and he sort of did not conform to the social structures of the day. And then John Speke was a younger man who was kind of mostly in it for the adventure, really loved hunting and like bagging big game on these trips, and was very, very thin-skinned and very conscious of his own place in society. He was an aristocrat. He was very handsome, and he was very sensitive to his own, how people were perceiving him and how he was perceived himself and how he felt about himself. He wanted to be seen as the hero and the leader and all that. So right from the beginning, Burton and Speke are assigned by the Geographical Society to try to find the headwaters of the Nile, and they clash right from the beginning. And most of it is not, at least as far as this book is written, Burton's kind of blindsided by the fact that Speke doesn't like him. And he is, because he's older and he sort of feels he's taken Speke on as a protege and under his wing, he sort of treats him in that way of older men who are sort of teaching and guiding younger men, and Speke does not take kindly to that sort of treatment. So they have a very adversarial relationship after their first expedition. So that's the other way that this book differs from the River of Doubt, which was about a singular expedition. This book is about several expeditions to try to find the headwaters of the Nile, and that was the other thing. Speke and Burton disagreed about where the source of the Nile actually was. This book is just filled with adventure and daring do, but I will say that the first part of the book starts off kind of slowly. Like, I felt it was slow going in the beginning. It wasn't until about maybe like 75 pages in that I felt it really took off, and I really became invested in the story of these two men, because neither one of them is particularly likable. Speak in particular turned me off big time. And I think Millard writes him that way. I found him to be quite a petty little brat for most of the book. And although I do have some sympathy for him in the end, I do feel like he was very manipulative, and he was very willing to throw other people under the bus in order to get the glory of any endeavor that he was involved in. And Burton was also very singularly focused on what he was doing, and also was very racist and, very sure of himself and his own opinions. There's an interesting sort of subplot in this book about his eventual wife, a young English woman who meets him and just falls head over heels in love with him, and defies her family to marry him because he's poor and not an aristocrat, and she comes from a well-to-do, well-connected family, and they are like, no, you're not marrying this dude. He's not in our class, and he's not going to be good for you. But she defies them, and they do end up married. And she, a lot of this, Millard's very good about using primary source material to back up her narrative. And so this woman had a very extensive diary or diaries and letters that she wrote about her sort of obsession with Burton, who was quite a bit older than her. And so it's quite, it's like this woman, she's so he's my hero and he's my God, and I'll kneel at his feet and I'll do everything to make his life easier, and I don't care what kind of hardships I have to endure in order to support him in his endeavors. And that was tough. That was tough to read about. I just really felt like I didn't know if she had Stockholm syndrome or what, but I was like, lady, I don't know, you got to be more self-protective. But she gets hers in the end too, I would say. So there wasn't Millard is not what I would call a particularly she's not what I would call a beautiful nature writer. She's more of a straightforward type of writer. She's writing this story as a narrative, keep you involved in what's going to happen next, what's going to happen next, what's going to happen next kind of a storytelling procedure. She's a journalist, so that definitely comes through. So I don't really have any passages that I want to share with you for their beauty. But I do have a passage that I want to share with you that is the kind of writing that is just so engaging and just so grab your attention. So this is during the first expedition to try to find the head of the Nile. And this is about Speak. Later, awoken by an odd sensation that was not on his head or in it, Speak realized to his horror that one of the beetles had crawled deep in his ear canal. He went his course, struggling up the narrow channel, until he got arrested by want of passage room, he later wrote. This impediment evidently enraged him, for he began with exceeding vigor, like a rabbit at a hole, to dig violently away at my tympanum. At first, Speak was tempted to react in the same way that the expedition's donkeys had when a swarm of bees had set upon them, running around in circles, racing blindly under bushes, frantically trying anything to rid themselves of the menace. Instead, forcing himself to remain calm, he tried nearly every remedy he could think of, desperately searching for something, salt, oil, tobacco, that he could pour into his ear to chase the beetle and its sharp black mandibles out. Finally, he resorted to melted butter, coaxing the sticky liquid down his ear canal. When that didn't work, he picked up his penknife. I applied the point of a penknife to his back, which did more harm than good, he wrote. Though a few thrusts kept him quiet, the point also wounded my ear so badly that inflammation set in, severe suppuration took place, and all the facial glands extending from that point down to the point of the shoulder became contorted and drawn aside, and a string of boils decorated the whole length of that region. It was the most painful thing I ever remembered to have endured. So that's the kind of storytelling you can be sure that you're going to encounter in a Candice Millard book. And it's just you want to keep reading because it's so unbelievable, but you're also like, oh my God, I don't want to read that. So yeah, I really was engaged with this. I enjoyed my time spent with this for the most part. I will say also that at the end, sort of the last quarter of the book, Millard really explores this idea about European age of exploration and what that meant to the cultures and peoples that they were encountering in Africa and in Asia and in South America, and how detrimental, this European push to like map everything and find everything and exploit everything really was to those people who were from those areas. And I really very much appreciated that she takes that on as a topic, and she doesn't ignore the inherent racism that was a part of that, the inherent sense of superiority by white Europeans over other cultures. There's a couple of sort of guide people who helped these different expeditions that were Africans, and she gives them their due. She brings them out of obscurity and talks about how they were essential to these expeditions surviving in the first place. And if they did succeed, it was in great part due to their native assistance in the process. And that so often they were just simply left out of the historical accounts because the white men who were writing those accounts didn't feel it was necessary to talk about them or describe them or give them any credit. So yeah, I thought that was a really interesting and important part of this whole narrative. So yeah, another very good book by Candice Millard. I really do enjoy her writing style. I'm really glad to have read this during this month of Victober to learn more about the Victorian age penchant for running around the world and trying to find things that Europeans had not yet found. So that was October's book. So November, we're going to be doing author spotlight on Indigenous author from America named Linda Hogan. I do not have my book yet. I've ordered it. It has not arrived at my house. And so I'll put a picture here. I will be reading The Radiant Lives of Animals by Linda Hogan. And I am very much looking forward. I've never read anything by this author before, and I'm very interested to see what I think of her writing style. I hope that you will join us and pick up something by Linda Hogan in the month of November. And I hope that you did have a chance to read River of Gods by Candice Millard. And please tell me in the comments down below if you did read the book, what you thought of it. I'm very interested to know. I hope you're all doing well and finding some great books to read. I will talk to you later.